Welcome back, everyone. If you have been with us for the first 2 sessions, welcome back and thank you for sticking around. And if you are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. It really has been a stimulating, thought-provoking day, and we are so glad you are still with us here today.
Yes, welcome indeed. It's great to have you here. We have a packed and exciting time ahead together this evening. We're going to be hearing from some very important and critical voices that are going to be helping us to chart the way forward for our country, Nigeria.
Yes, absolutely. And to make sure that you're engaged and engaging, we're going to start off with an interactive poll. So here it goes. Who has served the longest term in Nigeria's history as its Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces?
1. Yakubu Gowon. 2. Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi. 3. Olusegun Obasanjo. And number 4, Muhammadu Buhari.
If you don't know the answer to this, you are not a true Nigerian.
In this final session, we've decided to give away all the giveaway items that we've not managed to give away throughout today so far. So stay alert and get ready to pounce on them when the opportunities come up. Now, beyond the fun elements of today's conference, we've really come together to unpack the very serious issues that Nigerians and Nigeria are having to deal with, are having to face on a daily basis. And we thought that beyond hearing it in breakout sessions from third parties, beyond hearing it from other people speaking about it, we thought it's important that you hear the voice of the victims themselves.
Because members of Ruku community, Gashi district in Plateau State, were considered infidels by the Fulani terrorists. On the 23rd of June 2018, these Fulani terrorists had judgment pronounced and carried out on them.
That day, my friends and I were sitting outside the house when we heard a gunshot. Then it became sporadic. We started running. Soon after, we started hearing the chants, Allah Akbar, followed by loud and now consistent gunshots. We saw a horde of Fulani men coming into our community. We asked what we had done to them, but they responded with more shouts, Allah Akbar, and we will kill you today, and more gunshots. My friends and I identified some of the Fulani men. They had settled with us in our community. When they kept shooting, we ran into a house and hid in the bathroom. The Fulani men went after us and set the bathroom on fire. There was a bag of charcoal on the roof. It began to drop on us. With my bare hands, I redirected the burning charcoal so that it wouldn't burn us. They waited patiently for us to burn. It was as though they had decided either the fire kills us or they will shoot us dead. Therefore, we pretended to be dead every time the charcoal fell on us. One of my friends could no longer bear the heat. He attempted to escape, but the men shot him in the chest. When the fire subsided, one of the attackers came into the room and turned our bodies to confirm we were dead. He shouted to the group, "The infidels are dead." Satisfied, they left the room. At 7 p.m., we got up and walked out of the bathroom. Those who hadn't been injured saw us and helped us into a community called Tenti Baba. At the clinic, the doctor administered pain relief drugs and referred me to Ola Hospital in Jos because he said my case was critical. I spent 3 days at the hospital. My body, however, started swelling. I was referred again, this time to Jos University Teaching Hospital.
Philemon was discharged to live with his sister in Bocchus after 11 months at youth.
Because of this attack, my children's education has been halted. I can no longer pay the school fees. I couldn't even afford my hospital bills. I appreciate the Emancipation Center for taking responsibility for all my treatments. At 6 a.m., the 11th of March 2019, Rahila, her children, and blind grandmother that had come to take refuge were in their home.
Suddenly, we heard some of our community members shouting, alerting everyone to get out of their homes because the Fulani terrorists had entered our village. Terrified, I tried to quickly get myself and family out. But because I was almost 9 months pregnant, it was a struggle. I managed to get my daughter up so I could get her on my back and run. My older son had already run out of the house.
From a distance, she could hear the Fulani men threatening the villagers.
I heard them shouting Allah Akbar and telling people they were going to kill them. In defiance, some villagers shouted back at the terrorists, demanding to know what crimes they had committed. By this time, our village was already surrounded. Those who escaped got out only by the grace of God. I tried to run with my daughter on my back, but it was difficult. 2 men stopped us and they cut down my son and daughter with a machete. They severed my left hand twice. When they struck me the first time, I felt the pain. But when they slashed my hand the second time, I had lost all consciousness.
Rahila's face, hand and head are covered with deep cuts. The wound on her face is one of many. She was left on the ground to die. It is by the grace of God I survived, she says.
Da suka gama akwai masu harbe-harbe akwai masu yanka dinnan ga aeroplane yana gudu a sama kamar zai sauka kasa kamar zai hau bai haura ba bai sauka ba.
While the terrorists carried on with their operation, Rahila recounted seeing a helicopter hovering in the air. It will seem the helicopter was about to land, but would lift up again. It eventually flew away when the operation was over.
When I regained consciousness, the terrorists had gone. A search party was now present, looking for survivors. They found me. They did not know how to lift me, seeing I was 9 months pregnant. So they put 2 sticks together, placed me on it, and laid me under a mango tree. When the police finally showed up, the assault on lives and property had been completed. My mother-in-law was killed. Our house burnt down. We couldn't recover anything from our home. My blind grandmother was also cut in several places, but she survived the attack. Others were not so lucky.
Rahila was taken to the General Hospital in Kaduna, where they amputated her hand and stitched all the cuts on her face and the rest of her body. In the process, she lost her baby. The doctors confirmed it was a baby boy. She was due to deliver in March, the month of the attack. The child on her back, however, survived the attack.
Lokacin na nima abin siya sabulu ba na samu san tuna da ina da hannayena in samu abin da zan biya ma kaina bukata.
Rahila and her family are now entirely dependent on the support they receive from strangers.
So that is the exact reason why we are all here today, to support the victims, the people who are mostly impacted by the Nigerian crisis. Now, you are about to hear from someone who has worked tirelessly to raise awareness of the plight of victims across Nigeria, to bring their voices to UK Parliament, NGOs, international multilateral bodies and ministers. Please welcome Lord Alton of Liverpool.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at your conference on Nigeria, and particularly to say something about the report of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Freedom of Religion or Belief, of which I'm Vice Chairman. We carried out an investigation, we published a report, and it begins with a question mark. Is there an unfolding genocide in Nigeria? Well, the International Criminal Court is also asking that same question, and a preliminary examination has begun. The court's been asked to look at the circumstances which have unravelled in Nigeria, to look at the scale of the atrocities, and to decide whether under the 1948 Genocide Convention the crime of genocide is being carried out. That involves the specific targeting of a group because of their ethnicity, their religion, or some other characteristic, and being targeted for that reason. But there's a lot of stagnation within the International Criminal Court at the moment, and although I hope that they will expedite their assessment and proceed with a formal investigation, there doesn't seem to be much sense of urgency. Although the track record of the ICC is patchy, let us at least give them credit for indicting Sudan's former president, Omar al-Bashir, for genocide and crimes against humanity in Darfur, and recognise that he's now in prison. The wheels of justice may travel very slowly, but eventually they do reach their destination. And the fact that he's awaiting trial shows that in the fullness of time, even the mighty can be held to justice. Earlier failures to wake up to what was underway in Sudan led to a savage civil war. I travelled to South Sudan at the height of that war, and at least 2 million people died there. It also saw the displacement of millions of others, and ultimately, of course, led to the partition of the country. It's not fanciful to see this as a harbinger of what could occur in Africa's most populous country, Nigeria, a nation of some 200 million people. President Buhari appears to have belatedly woken up to the seriousness of the SARS protests and the outrage felt by many of the country's citizens about the abject failure to uphold the rule of law or to bring to account those who corrupt it. He needs to show a similar belated understanding of the same anger felt by beleaguered communities subjected to the most terrible violence and depredations, and why many of them believe that the country's government has failed to read the signs of an emerging genocide and to prevent it. President Buhari needs to understand that a failure to protect pluralism and diversity in Nigeria risks turning his wonderful country into another Sudan. That 1948 Convention on the Prevention of Genocide lays duties on all signatories to prevent, protect, and punish those responsible for genocide. The dismal threefold failure to do any of those three things, to prevent, to protect, or punish, results in repeated mass atrocities. Recall that the same failure in Rwanda led to 1 million deaths during 100 days of slaughter. Between 250,000 and 500,000 women were subjected to systematic rape and to sexual violence, just like the crimes being committed by Boko Haram and others in Nigeria today. I visited the genocide sites in Rwanda and saw for myself the shocking mass graves, and I was the first parliamentarian to go into Darfur during Bashir's genocide, which led to 300,000 deaths and 2 million displacements. All the evidence shows that Boko Haram and its fighters have committed sex and gender-based violence, including sexual slavery, rape, forced marriage, and forced pregnancies. The atrocities are widespread. Think of young Leah Sharibu. Sadly, amongst many of Boko Haram's victims who have been abused and misused. Think of the many other women and girls who first gained international attention when on April the 14th, 2014, the terrorist group abducted 276 girls, mostly between 16 and 18 years of age, from a secondary school in Chibok in Borno State. International attention to Chibok faded as the juggernaut of media interest and the celebrities moved on. And be clear, the Boko Haram atrocities have affected much greater numbers than those kidnapped at Chibok or mentioned in the press reports. Boko Haram chooses its targets for a variety of reasons, including on the basis of religion of its targets, for tactical reasons, including land control, and often it targets schools, especially those which are attended by women and girls. The impact of these crimes on women and girls is devastating. Even if they survive the attacks, the abuse, they'll probably struggle with mental or physical injuries requiring medical assistance for the rest of their lives. These things are not easily accessed, and nor are they forgotten easily either. The Office of the Prosecutor at the International Criminal Court identified Boko Haram's use of rape and sexual violence against women and girls as one of the cases for their review. But as we await a decision on whether any official investigations will be initiated, the chances of justice being done remain bleak. Boko Haram has specifically targeted Christian minorities and others they considered as non-believers on account of their faith. Indeed, as Boko Haram's leader, Abubakar Shekau, justified such acts of violence against Christians, stating in his words, "All those clerics are to be killed for following democracy. All of them are infidels. I will tell Muslims what Allah wants of them to do. We are anti-Christian, and those that deviated from Islam, they are forming basis within prayers, but infidels. To the people of the world, everybody should know his status. It is either you are with us or Mujahideen, or you are with the Christians. We know what is happening in this world. It is a jihad war against Christians and Christianity. It's a war against Western education, democracy, and constitution. This is a war against Christians and democracy and their constitution. Allah says we should finish them when we get them." So he's clear about what Boko Haram stood for and stands for today. It's a first for blood-curdling headlines. There have been reports emanating from the Middle Belt where farmers are under attack from Fulani militia, and from northern Nigeria, where in January of this year, a Daesh-affiliated terror group intensified their attacks. They have been reported to have killed Christians with a promise to continue to spill more blood without mercy. So this merging of Boko Haram, Fulani militias, and Nigeria's ISIS, who between them have already taken thousands of lives, endangers the future cohesion of Nigeria and creates the conditions for genocide. A few months ago, with Baroness Caroline Cox, I met Rebecca Sharibu, the mother of Leah Sharibu, who was abducted, raped, impregnated, forcibly converted by Boko Haram. Rebecca came to Westminster in February. She implored us not to ignore the ideological motives behind executions, abductions, and genocide, with a misplaced self-serving narrative which reduces the ills of the world to climate change or competition for resources, which may indeed be a contributory factor, but far less of a significant factor than this wicked ideology. Global warming didn't abduct Leah Sharibu. It didn't behead the 11 Nigerian Christians who were murdered on Christmas Day. A statement to President Buhari from the Nigerian Catholic Bishops' Conference challenged him in these words: "Since the president who appointed the heads of the nation's security agencies has refused to call them to order, even in the face of chaos and barbarity into which our country has been plunged, we are left with no choice but to conclude that they're acting on a script that he approves of. If the president cannot keep our country safe, then he automatically loses the trust of the citizens. He should no longer continue to preside over the killing fields and mass graveyards that our country has become. The Archbishop of Abuja has described what he called territorial conquest and ethnic cleansing, and he said, "The very survival of our nation is at stake." And in the words of an Anglican canon in the Middle Belt, why do so many security service personnel spend their time guaranteeing our politicians rather than protecting our people? The highly respected former Army Chief of Staff and Defence Minister, Lieutenant General Theophilus E. Danjuma, says that the armed forces are, and these are his words, not neutral, they collude, in what he called the ethnic cleansing in riverine states by Fulani militias. He said, "The ethnic cleansing must stop in all the states of Nigeria. Otherwise, Somalia will be a child's play." We're all familiar with the Black Lives Matter campaign. Where is the outrage on behalf of Black Christian lives in Nigeria, now one of the most dangerous and deadliest places in the world to be a Christian? A few weeks ago, I took part in a webinar with the Reverend Johnny Moore and Rabbi Abraham Cooper. They have just published The Next Jihad, and anyone who wonders whether the title on our parliamentary report was justified should read that book. As Nina Shea of the Hudson Institute says about the book, it records the relentless, unspeakable deaths and torment of countless Nigerians, Christians in Jos, Kano, Plateau State, and Nigeria's many other slaughterhouses, while, her words, the courageous witness of these African Christians is met by silence as their own government and the international community respond with cold indifference. Johnny Moore and Rabbi Cooper write with clarity, insight, and urgency about what doesn't need a question mark. This is clearly an unfolding genocide, driven by jihadist ideology and hatred of difference. They detail the hacking to death and beheading of Christians, the destruction of homes, livelihoods, and places of worship, and the abduction and rape of young women personified by the story of Leah Sharibu. And they ask, why are we so indifferent? They argue that this next jihad may not only jeopardize the security of all Western Africa, but take much of the world with it, especially an already weakened Europe. Think of France and other European countries too. Nigeria has the largest Christian population in Africa. If nothing is done, Christians will not be the last victims, for no person of any faith, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, or people of no faith at all, will be spared the ravages of terrorists who believe that their profane mission of death is in the service of God. The 15 recommendations that are enumerated in this book by Johnny Moore and Rabbi Cooper should be a call to action for politicians the world over. Winston Churchill once issued a solemn warning to people who were indifferent and silent in the face of the rise of Nazism. He said, "Each one hopes that if he feeds the crocodile enough, the crocodile will eat him last. All of them hope that the storm will pass before their turn comes to be devoured. But I fear greatly," said Churchill, "that the storm will not pass. It will rage, and it will roar ever more loudly, ever more widely." President Buhari and the Nigerian authorities must stop feeding the crocodiles, and before this storm destroys Nigeria and is further exported to the streets of Europe and Australia, India and the United States and elsewhere, we must do far more to raise our voices and speak for those in mortal danger. That is why your conference is so important. I hope it gives you the courage and the determination to redouble your efforts in raising the alarm so that no one will ever be able to say that they did not know.
Our very deep appreciation goes to Lord Alton for sharing with us this evening, and indeed for all the work that you do tirelessly inside and outside of Parliament, not just for improving the lives of Nigerians, but indeed improving the lives of persecuted people all over the world. And working alongside Baroness Caroline Cox, the MPs Jim Shannon, the MP Fiona Bruce, you guys do an amazing work, and our prayers are that the Lord will continue to bless you and strengthen you and increase the works of your hand. Thank you. And now we're going to instantaneously fly across to Abeokuta in Ogun State in the southwest parts of Nigeria, where we get to meet with the former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. He was the military head of state of Nigeria between 1976 and 1979. And then he became the first civilian president in the Third Republic from 1999 to 2007. Dr. Richard Ikebe went along to interview him on all of our behalves.
Let me begin by congratulating the International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice on its first anniversary and its second conference. And from what I have heard from you, Richard, this is an organization that I know is working for Nigeria, yes. Is working for the Sahel, yes. Is working for West Africa, yes. Is working for Africa, in addition to working in Europe and in America. And from their report, which you have kindly given me a copy, I cannot but thank them for the good work they are doing, particularly in my own country, Nigeria, which is beset with a number of difficulties or challenges. For a nation to descend into abyss, so to say, it's gradual, and it is not taking account of what should have been taken account of. Neglect, nonchalant attitude, bad governance, which manifests itself in different ways, exclusion in a society where you should have inclusive, that should be made inclusive society, lack of education that should be there, because if you do not give your children education, it doesn't matter what innate ability they have, they cannot develop that innate ability to the extent that they can be useful for themselves, they can be useful for their family, they can be useful for their community, they can be useful for their locality and their nation, and indeed the world at large. And these are the areas where we have gradually fallen behind over the years. And in some cases, we have taken one step forward and then one step side, one step sideways, and one step or two steps at times backward. So this is the way, this is how we got to where we are. And you will see, for instance, let me give you just an example. At independence, Nigeria was better economically than most of the Asian countries now that we are looking up to. But in the last decade, the last 2 decades of the 20th century,
Nigeria stagnated and the Asian countries move on. Then we came again and we started at the beginning of this century, end of the millennium and the beginning of this century. And then, well, we even caught up with some of them. And then by the end of the first decade, we started going down again. And we've gone down so much now that we've become a laughingstock. Well, you have just seen one of the consequences. The youth are angry, and they have exhibited or manifested their anger in a way. And as I said, well, it's over, but not yet over. Because the underlying issues, the underlying factors, if we just paper over them or put a carpet over them, and they are not dealt with, when it will come back with vengeance. And you don't need to be an oracle to know that. And there's one thing that has happened now, which never happened before, where they single out members of the political class. About half a dozen senators were singled out, not in one state, not in one zone, and that is a new phenomenon. And that is sending a message to all of us, not just the political class, all of us, Richard, including you and me, that anybody who is middle class and above should be careful. Let me give you a few things. Our Constitution charges the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Commission with responsibility to fix the salaries and emolument of all political officers. Our members of National Assembly decided to fix their own for themselves. And you never even know, but the estimate is that a senator goes home with about 40 million naira a month. A member of House of Assembly goes home with about 30 million naira a month, everything. But our minimum wage is 30,000 naira a month. Now, if you say, okay, look, let the highest paid member of the National Assembly get 100 times the minimum wage, that will be only 3 million. Now, if a member of House is getting 30 million, find out what that is. If a senator is going home with 40 million, find out what that is. And the argument that, oh yes, well, it's the salary or the budget of the National Assembly is only a small budget compared, it's absolute nonsense. We are talking of, look, does anybody do 100 times the job of anybody else? So that is the way to look at it. And for as long as that is there, then you will have people complaining. Now, that is one thing. Another thing is that who really minds little things? Who minds little things? Let's take the issue that we have just had, the NSAS protest. I believe those youth were genuine, and they were not asking for regime change. They were genuine, and they went on for about 9 days, if not more, before we started talking to them. Why didn't we talk to them earlier? Why? Nigerians? And they were very well organized in a peaceful way, in a way that they, in fact, clean wherever they do assembled. So why didn't we do that? And then why did we allow it to be hijacked by hoodlums? Why did we have the complicity from the presidency down to the man who pulled the trigger about Lekki toll gate? Why? Why didn't we come up and make a clean breast of what happened? Why did the president make the statement at first and he didn't even make any allusion to it? Why did he take the military so long before they now admit? First of all, they denied, and then later on they admitted that they were invited to intervene. Why? Why do we do these things that are unnecessary? Why shouldn't the government, right from the word go, say, well, look, if it's an apology, or we went in and we didn't mean to shoot to kill, we meant that they should fire into the air, and we are sorry if that is what happened. Why? Now, you see, what this type of thing does is that it erodes the credibility of government. And that doesn't help. So I believe that wittingly and unwittingly, we do ourselves unnecessary harm. We do ourselves we put ourselves in a position that we shouldn't have put ourselves as a nation. Well, a lot can still be done. Well, the unfortunate thing is that the present administration believe that you can ignore anything and get away with it. And it has done it for the last 5 years. So I think it will continue to do that. When people were shouting, look, you are doing nepotism. You are not doing inclusive appointment. You are government didn't pay any attention to that. And all these things don't go unnoticed, and they don't go reacted to in the short, medium, or long term. Now, I think the idea will have been, look, you young men and young women, well, I understand what you are. I understand your plight. Some of you have gone to school, you have college education, you are frustrated. Now, we are doing this. We can do more. And the reason why our effort has not been able to show is other problem we have. We have problem of security. And people who will want to invest here, whether they are domestic investors or foreign investors, will not be as encouraged as they would have been if we don't have the internal security issues of Boko Haram, of banditry, of kidnapping and all. And people will understand that. Now, what are we doing? Well, we have done this. Boko Haram is still there. We are doing more. And that sort of thing. Now, take them as you will talk to your children. I take on my children. They take me on and say, Daddy, why do you do this? And I say, well, look, do you know why I do this? Only 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I was going to a farm. It's not even my, in our culture, it's my son, because he's my nephew. But in our culture, there's no word for nephew. He's my son. So we were in the car and he said, Daddy, how come you have a farm in Igbora? We were going to Lanlate. And I said, okay, I will tell you what happened. Since you want to know, when I came back from the war at the beginning of 1970s, I was looking for farmland. So I went to Igbora, and the people of Igbora said, oh, look, we will do what traditionally our fathers used to do. When you come back from war and you want to farm, they just say, go there and take as much land as you do. And I said, that was what they did to me. Oh, my nephew said, oh, is that what happened? I said, that's what happened. They just asked me to bring 2 bottles of Shinap, Cola Nut, bitter cola, and they pray and convey the land to me. And I said, that's why I treat that particular farm differently from other farms. Oh, he said, I'm happy to know this. I ask question, and I make explanation, I give explanation, and I believe that is what the youth need. But they need not only just to be told that, they need to see that things are changing. There are our development partners who are genuine friends of Nigeria. They should look at things well. And some of them know what is happening in Nigeria more than many of us Nigerians know. That is the truth. And then if it shouldn't be necessary for outsiders to tell the Nigerian government to treat Nigerians as human beings, to observe fundamental human rights, not to treat Nigerians who are peacefully protesting and demonstrating. And as the president himself pointed out, this is part of our constitution. And the president quoted that part of the constitution. Now, if that is part of the constitution, it must be observed. It must be obeyed by observing it, not sending brute force to march on peaceful, law-abiding, and they are singing Nigerian national anthem, carrying Nigerian flag. What more how more patriotic do you want them to be? And they are saying, look, there is what police have been doing, and the police didn't deny it. And anybody who knows the way the police, and of course, I think credit in a way must also be given to the Inspector General of Police, because he said they should not confront the protesters until, of course, things went out of hand. So what can they do? They can watch our situation. They can give advice, even though at times government may ignore it or disregard it, but it will go on record that advice should have been given, and it is important. And Nigerians will be encouraged, both Nigerians internal, at home and in diaspora, that, oh, they are genuine friends who are looking at the situation in Nigeria and who are not just folding their arms and or wringing their hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do. There's a lot that can be done. The point we should remember is that anybody in government want people to talk well of him or her. So if, of course, there is a question where the government has done well and it should need to be commended, let them commend. Where the government has not done well and it need to be condemned, let them do so. I believe so.
But ours is not a hopeless situation.
No. You know, I'm an incurable optimist about Nigerian situation. Nigeria will be good in my time. Amen. And you know that my time is not too long.
I thought you were shooting for 100.
It doesn't matter, even if it's 100. What I have left is a lot less than 2 decades. No, but I believe, and the way I look at it is this: if we get everything right, Richard, you look at what can happen. We can develop, this country can develop and grow at the rate of 10 to 11% GDP per annum. What that means is that in 21 years, we are on autopilot. Because if we start at 100, in 7 years, we have doubled to 200. In 14 years, we have doubled to 400. In 21 years, we have doubled to 800. Take it from, and I know this can be done. Yeah. I know this is possible because I have done it. So what do we have to get right? We have to get the politics right. We have to get the politics right. And I always say that Nigeria is a complex country, but Nigerians are not complicated to manage. You have to be honest with them.
How do we get the politics right? I don't want to spoil you, but it's an answer.
Now, well, without being immodest,
yes,
the way I got it right. I talk of Nigeria being complex. You have to know that Nigeria is complex. And little things matter. Okay, let me give you 2 or 3. When I came as elected president, I looked at the officers and I appointed military officers based on what I saw as their performance and efficiency. And what happened? The chief of army staff I appointed happened to be a Christian. The chief of air staff happened to be a Christian. And the chief of naval staff happened to be a Christian. It just happened that way. Then I said to myself, hey, this is wrong. So I have to make sure that I appointed a chief of defense staff who is a Muslim. So since he is over all of them, and that solved the problem. In fact, it didn't get to the stage when somebody has to raise alarm about it. No? Okay? Let me give you another one. I had two ministers from Delta And then I wanted to appoint another minister. And that is Ngozi, who is also from Delta. How can I appoint 3 ministers from Delta? So I chose Ngozi's place of her husband. And I called them. Yes. I said, well, look, you have a good wife. Do you mind if I take him against? And they say, no, it's good. It's good. So I did not take Ngozi as a minister from Delta. Against Delta. Now, I just give you that, and then of course you look at issues. I came in, and the Cocoa Alliance had been dissolved. I think what they give Nigeria from that, after the dissolution of Cocoa Alliance, producers and marketers and all that, was about $15 million. And I didn't know. And what happened? The officials were just using it to travel. By the time I heard about it and looked into it, they spent $2.5 million. And I said, okay, look, that's enough. I won't punish anybody for that. So the remaining $12.5 million we will use in developing cocoa. So we formed Cocoa Committee. 9 states we found are cocoa producing states in the country. And what happened? We moved cocoa production from 150,000 metric tons to 400,000 metric tons with that money. To the extent that my brother, John Kufuor, in Ghana, came to me and said, look, you are an oil-producing country. Now leave cocoa to us. And I said, brother, I will get to 1 million metric tons before I stop. Let me give you another example. In part of what we had done, some people came to me and said, the war hasn't, the civil war is not over. And I said, why? They say since the end of the Civil War, no Igbo man has been appointed as Minister of Defense. I said, but Igbo man has been appointed as head of one of the services. That's what matters. That's the... They say, no. An Igbo man, when an Igbo man is appointed as minister, I said, but minister is just administrative head. So I said, okay, if that is it. So I took Tom Ironsi, who was the son of late Ironsi, who was the first Nigerian GOC of the Nigerian Army. And I said, look, come, Minister of Defense. Then I called the people, I said, is the war over now? Because, you see, there is the reality. There is also the perception. And you must never ignore the perception. Even if they may be wrong thing they are perceiving, prove it to them and let them know that. So I think, and then of course I was spending $3.5 billion to service debt. That is unsustainable. And in spite of that, the quantum of debt was not going down. So I decided I have to get debt relief. I went for it. And I got it. One of my ministers, who was a a banker. The day we got debt relief, he came to me and said, "Sir, I must apologize to you." I said, what have you done? He said, all the time you were saying you are going to get debt relief, I was laughing at you. Because as a banker, I said, how can you borrow money and then you say you want to get relief from the money that you have borrowed?